How are you? How are you, spirit? Harm, love. Good to see you. So today we're actually doing a book club. Okay, so I'm not sure if you've been able to catch a couple of book clubs, but we are just now starting this book, and I think it is very transformative. And we're actually going to start with chapter one today. Right, we're starting with chapter one today. Um, so yes, and this is just you know, the beginning, just the beginning. I'm actually looking to also do. Hi, Mika. I'm also looking to do some in-person book club meetings. So if you guys are in New York, then that would be great. Hey, boo. Good to see you, darling. So we're starting a new book. Oh, let me show you. This is the new book that we're starting for book club. Um, I found a new cover that's much easier to see. The cover I have is black, so it's kind of hard to see. Oh, you're from New York, but you're not here anymore. Where are you? What state are you in? And also, do not mind my hair, y'all. I need to do my hair. Woo! I need to do my hair. I gotta find time to do it. I have not done it, but it's on my agenda. Seriously, no, for real. I want some twist, but I just don't have time for that. I'm gonna leave my hair in a bun, an unloved bun. That's it. But anywho, yes. So we're about to start book club, and yes, I'm gonna do some reading. And last time we did book club, we read the introduction. So now we're gonna start with chapter one. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, chapter one is called The Fierce and Loving Goddess. Okay. Let's get this started. Yes, yes, yes. Hey, Sherry. How are you? Okay. So hopefully you guys can see the title of the book, see it well. And if you guys need to get the book, just let me know if you want to get it. Okay, so this is an invocation to Kali. The black goddess Kali, the terrible one of many names, difficult of approach, whose stomach is a void and so can never be filled, and whose womb is giving birth forever to all things. A quote by Joseph Campbell. It is time for the invocation. Kali, be with us. Violence, destruction, receive our homage. Help us to bring darkness into the light, to lift out the pain, the anger, where it can be seen for what it is. The balance wheel for our vulnerable, aching love. Put the wild hunger where it belongs. Within the act of creation, crude power that forges a balance between hate and love. Help us to be the always hopeful, gardeners of the spirit, who know that without darkness nothing comes to birth, as without light nothing flowers. Bear the roots in mind, you, the Dark One, Kali, awesome power. May Sartan. Okay, so this is we're on page 14. It says, From Great Mother to Goddess. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. We are reading chapter 1, The Fierce and Loving Goddess. About 5 years ago, I was sitting in my sunroom reading the morning paper. A sense of excitement grew as I read an article on the dedication of a temple to the Black Goddess, Kali, right here in Toronto, Canada. Although I knew very little about her, I had become fascinated by her image. I saw her dancing, a bloodied sword in one hand and a severed bearded head in another. Her lolling tongue hung out of her gaping mouth, and around her neck dangled a necklace of skulls. Why was I fascinated by such a fierce image? Was I harboring some unconscious rage that wanted to burst out? Much as the patriarchal systems that dominate our culture irritate me, even enrage me, I sensed that that wasn't the explanation. I felt Kali herself crying out to me. At first glance, Kali comes across as a fierce embodiment of the devouring mother, who gobbles up everything, even her own children. A closer look, however, reveals a great halo around her head, a halo not seen in early depictions of the Great Mother. The halo attests to Kali's status as goddess, to her need to be understood not only as devourer, but also as transformer. She is black, dark as the matrix, dark as the vortex, from which all creation comes and to which it returns. To her devotees, she is like a black sapphire. Radiance shines through her blackness. She dances and laughs with abandon, intoxicated with the mystery that she is. Kali's dual role as devouring mother and enlightened goddess is highlighted in a poem written by Vivekananda, a Hindu sage of the 20th century. I am not one of those, he chanted, who put the garland of skulls round thy neck. The great goddess Kali, India Kali, when viewed in her highest form as wife of Shiva, is a perfect example of assimilation of the old Great Mother image into a new and higher corpus of great goddess mythology. And then look back in terror and call thee the merciful. The heart must become a burial ground, pride, selfishness, and desire all broken into dust. Then and then alone will the mother dance there. In this poem, Vivekananda disassociates himself from those who project their own fear onto Kali and then tremble before her, seeking to appease her wrath. Thank you. In these few opening lines, the poet captures the essence of genuine great goddess worship. There must be a death to the ego self. There must be a transformation in which there is a letting go of all false values, of all the things that the egotistical nature mistakenly clings to. In the burial ground of the heart, Kali's enlightened devotees see beyond literal death to the death of values rooted in fear. When they come to accept death as a necessary step in their transformation, then Kali can dance her dance of perpetual becoming. Once her cycles are accepted, those who love her are free of the fear of death, free of their own vulnerability, free to live her mystery. The mystery of Kali is that she is perpetually destroying and at the same time creating. Destroying in order to create, creating in order to destroy. Death in the service of life, life in the service of death. Kali is time, immanence, ceaseless becoming, nature as process. As ceaseless motion that has no purpose other than its own activity, Kali is an indifferent to the demands of the ego as she is to the instinct to survive. The opposites of life and death, love and hate, humility and pride, poverty and riches, mercy and revenge, justice and tyranny mean nothing to her, because with her there is no polarity. For Kali, all experience is one, life as well as death. In the Indian villages where Kali is celebrated in her own festival, the villagers spend weeks shaping a clay statue of their beloved goddess, she who is the feminine wisdom deep in the body, who makes no sense in the light of rationality. When her day arrives, they sing and dance from their primordial roots, carry her through the streets, and at the close of day, throw her into the river. Instantly, she goes back to mud. All the love and care that have gone into her creation are dissolved into the waters. Kali's creation and dissolution symbolize what the world of appearances looks like to those who recognize it as part of the larger totality. Those who can accept her cycle, life and death, are no longer vulnerable. They are fearless. Along with Krishna, Kali became one of the most popular deities in the Hindu pantheon. As David Kingsley points out, in many tantric texts, Kali's position is unambiguously declared to be that of a great deity. Indeed, in many texts, she is declared the supreme deity, triumphant over all others, equivalent, in fact, to Brahman. This rise in the worship of Kali and her subsequent elevation to supremacy represented a significant step in the evolution of matriarchal mythology. Thank you, Sandra. Drawing on the words of Bacofan, Newman, Campbell, and others, Ken Wilber outlines three stages in this evolution. The first stage, the Typhon, refers generally to the period of earliest Homo sapiens, Neanderthal and Cro Magnon, and is itself a structure of conscious, dominated by body bound mentality and instincts. In the earliest typhonic times, Wilbur writes, the Great Mother was probably not much more than an impact, a nonverbal shock at separate self existence, and an expression of simple biological dependence. In this period, the mother was the one who fed, who provided the necessities of life through plants, seeds, and animals. Caves afforded the protection of her womb, which eventually became the tomb of the cycle of life and death. She was both the nourisher of life and the destroyer. Life and death, joy and pain, were a seamless reality. And death, declares Earth Mother, in Shelley's Prometheus Unbound, shall be the last embrace of her, who takes the life she gave, even as a mother, folding her child, says, leave me not again. Life in this first phase was closely associated with blood. The monthly bleeding of women was thought to be the source of creation, When a baby was being formed in the womb, the bleeding stopped. New life was therefore assumed to come from the blood of the mother. Likewise, the Great Mother created out of her blood. She was the womb tomb of existence. All physical existence and the earth's abundant provision for the sustenance of life flowed from that essential source, the mother's fertility. The second stage of Great Mother mythology, as Wilbur describes it, grew out of the earliest awareness of separation from the mother. As humans slowly separated out from nature, the primitive emotions of life and joy became differentiated from those of death and pain. In this phase, the self sense was more structured, more articulate, and so, likewise, the Great Mother. Men and women were more conscious of their own tenuous existence, and thus more conscious of the Great Mother, what she was and what she demanded. As life and death became polarized, humans began to contemptualize the possibility of non being, a terrifying prospect for a fledgling consciousness. Death came to be invested with starkness and terror, and the question then became, how do I please Mother so that she will give me life rather than death? What was the way to appease the Great Mother, to keep her as protectress and prevent her wrathful vengeance? Give her what she demands, blood, and likewise invent a precise way to do it, ritual. Thus, the first great ritual was a ritual of blood sacrifice, offered to the Great Mother, to Mother Nature, in a bartered attempt to quench her desire for blood. Blood is indeed bodily life, and if you want to purchase life, you buy it with blood. So goes paleologic. Like magic, it works with partial truths. And like magic, since it is unable to grasp higher perspectives or wider contexts, it arrives at barbaric conclusions. Just prior to and during the early part of the pre Iron Age, a third form of matriarchal mythology began to emerge. Those with a more highly evolved consciousness began to see beyond the concrete reality of nature and saw into the underlying essence that pervaded and unified all things. With this insight came the first glimmerings of an awareness of the subtle or archetypal realm. The unifying light in nature came to be worshipped as the goddess, the mediator of transformation. Thank you. The Great Mother was seen as the One, the creatrix of all things, and the ultimate source of life and death. Her oneness was bound to the realm of nature as the unconscious personification of it. The goddess, as distinct from the mother, while remaining immanent in nature and while demanding sacrifice, did not require blood sacrifice. Worship of the great goddess Worship of the goddess required a movement from the literal and concrete to the symbolic, a movement that launched a radical mutation in consciousness. This mutation affected a release from the mother bound limitations of nature, not unlike that which occurred when Abraham was released from the blood sacrifice of his son Isaac, a release that launched the ethical consciousness identified with the Semitic tradition. Hi, Eve. The goddess reached a high level of conscious articulation in many of her numerous forms. Perhaps the best known are the Egyptian goddess Isis and Sophia, the wisdom figure of the Old Testament. The sense of oneness, the sense of absolute authority that each carried in her respective millennia is evident from the following descriptions. In the Book of Wisdom, Sophia reaches mightily from end to end of the earth and is praised because though she is but one, she can do all things. In the Aritologies of Isis, we read, I am Isis, sole ruler forever, and I oversee the ends of the sea and the earth. I have authority, and though I am but one, I oversee them. Isis was recognized as the creator of the universe, and as such, preside over all its elements. I divided earth from heaven. I set forth the paths of the stars. I established the course of the sun and moon. Whatever I determine, this too will be performed for me. All things obey me. The goddess Sophia, whom we are called to enthrone in our being, is our life, and no choice possession can compare with her. Continually, she prepares a banquet that is food for the soul. Wisdom has built her house. She has set up her 7 columns. She has dressed her meal, mixed her wine. Yes, she has spread her table. She has sent out her maidens. She calls for the heights out over the city. Let whoever is simple turn in here. To him who lack understanding, I say, come eat of my food and drink of the wine I have mixed. Forsake foolishness that you may live. Advance in the way of understanding. The most important factor in the evolution of consciousness is that in reaching this level of archetypal oneness, the individual dies to the sense of a separate self, as stated by Wilbur. The simple yet crucial insight, the sacrifice of self discloses the eternal, was the esoteric insight empowering the mythology of self-sacrifice to the great goddess. Sacrifice carried out in prayer, in contemplation, in meditative ritual and ceremony, in symbolic mass. Worshipping the Great Mother meant identifying with her and trying to appease her great power over one's life by offering a sacrifice outside of oneself. The worship of the goddess, on the other hand, involved entering into a process of self-transformation. In order to reach the desired level of archetypal oneness, one had to transcend the ego boundaries. At this early stage in ego development, transcendence could be very threatening. It was safer merely to maintain participation mystique with the mother. Penetration to the level of archetypal oneness involved moving beyond the body self, beyond the ego self, to a realization of soul consciousness. The eclipse of the great goddess. So this particular chapter has certain subsections. So this is the second subsection called The Eclipse of the Great Goddess. With the onset of the Iron Age, worship of the sun god, albeit a sun god bound to the mother, began to emerge. As consciousness developed, a sense of self began to emerge from the body self. This is the natural course of human development. As the self developed even further, human beings began to take their projections of divinity off the Great Mother and the goddess, and to identify with the ascendant symbol of the sun god. Whereas they had once taken power from nature through bone, feathers, and blood, now they sought to exert power over nature. All the powers of nature that had been an expression of the Great Mother were transferred to the sun. Humanity moved from polytheism to monotheism. No longer did the king serve as the phallic consort of the Great Mother, but in keeping with the shift to monotheism, he assumed supremacy as the representative of the sun god. Nature, in this patriarchal paradigm, was seen as something to be controlled and dominated. In an odd reversal of roles, nature was now pressed into the service of man. power came to be perceived as deriving from strength. Virtually unchanged since its inception, this paradigm was dominated Western civilization down to the present. The new state of ego consciousness that emerged gave rise to the hero myth, which achieved dominance by 1500 BCE. Now, there are several fascinating aspects to this historical emergence of the hero myth. The myth of the individual hero triumphing over the great mother, or one of her consorts, such as the old serpent dragon Ouroboros, or over a great mother derivative, such as the Medusa with serpent monster hair, or over a great mother offspring, such as Typhon. The first aspect is that the hero is simply the new egoic structure of consciousness, which coming into existence at this time, the low egoic period, is naturally given living expression in the mythology of the period. Since she was rooted in the chaos of nature, the Great Mother was defeated by the hero. Her cyclical realm allowed only for repetition, not for the linear sense of progression that the hero desires. Instead of integrating the mother mythology, the hero disassociated from it. So complete was the dissociation that generations of children have grown up and come through the educational system without ever having heard of the Great Mother. At best, it is an historical footnote of little significance. Tragically, with the rise of ego consciousness, repression of the great goddess as well as the Great Mother occurred. The result was a gradual eclipse of the understanding of the unifying light in creation, the subtle oneness of the goddess that had begun to break through into the human awareness. Yes, yes, yes. With the loss of this burgeoning consciousness as a container for the process of transformation, an enormous split took place in the psyche, both culturally and individually. The Encyclopedia of Human Behavior describes a dissociative reaction as a psychoneurotic reaction in which a portion of experience is split off or isolated from conscious awareness. This dissociation not only protects us from threatening impulses, it also allows us to act them out without having to bear any conscious responsibility for our actions. We thereby avoid both anxiety and guilt. When the dissociation takes place at a cultural level, it forms a basis for the neurosis of the whole culture. Patriarchy, dissociated from its maternal ground, reconstructed that ground in the guise of a phallic mother that appears, for example, as Mother Church, Motherland, Al Mater. Ironically, the very fear that led patriarchy to repress matriarchy has kept patriarchy neurotically bound in a struggle for power to what it did and does repress. What is repressed out of fear reemerges in the form of its repression. It is not therefore the absence of the feminine that should be lamented. Both feminine and masculine are always already present in some form. It is the distorted forms of their presence that exaggerate the tragic imbalance between them. That imbalance undermines an entire civilization, contributing to its collapse. With characteristic insight and wit, Gloria Steinem invents Phyllis Freud, who, unlike her more celebrated male namesake, does not come to the conclusion that women are obsessed with penis envy. Female psychiatrists and psychoanalysts were imbued with the philosophy of this female Freud. the founding genius who had proved that men's lack of wombs made them anatomically inferior and terminally envious. Men who dared protest were doubly pathologized by a diagnosis of womb envy. Thus, it was a belief system with no way out. This notion of womb envy does, in fact, have historical support, namely in patriarchy's ongoing attempts to reinvent and control the womb through its assumptions, institutions, and legislation. If we look at the English Romantic poets of the early 19th century, we see something very different going on. Essentially, their gifts made them outcasts from patriarchal society. Their genius opened them to the collective unconscious, and their poetry is an articulation not only of their personal unconscious, but of the cultural unconscious as well. Great poetry may be compared to big dreams, in that both come directly from the unconscious and are then amplified in the waking state in order to understand them more fully. When Blake, Shelley, and Keats were writing, they did not understand, nor did they have the means to understand, the unconscious as it was unveiled by Freud and Jung in our century. The unifying light in creation, the feminine that had been eclipsed, particularly during the 17th century, began her return and made her presence known in the unconscious of these male poets. Although the patriarchal ego prides itself on being reasonable, the 20th century has been anything but the age of reason. In our collective neurosis, we have raped the earth, disrupted the delicate balance of nature, and created phallic missiles of mass destruction. Ironically, in our desperate attempt to keep death at bay or prevent dissolution from the point of view of the ego, we have brought ourselves to the brink of extinction. So long as we deny the Great Mother and refuse to integrate her as goddess in our psychic development, we will continue to act our neurotic fantasies and endanger our very survival as a species. In spite of the rising sun, the Great Mother is still very much alive in the murky depths of our unconscious. Her presence is often demonstrated in our dreams. In one dream, for example, a man sees his mother in the kitchen. Blocking the kitchen door is a large crocodile. The man goes into the living room with his cat and dog. The crocodile comes toward him and swallows the dog. He manages to save the cat. In our homes, as in fairy tales, the kitchen is one of the most important rooms. There, we prepare food, and through the miracle of fire, we transform the energies of nature into energies we are able to assimilate. This, in Tamer's mother, is in the kitchen, but his way to her is blocked by a crocodile. He later recalled that when he was 10 or 11, his mother was very depressed. In this image, he is cut off from her by this immense animal that sleeps in the mud, the epitome of inertia. The crocodile is near the beginning of the evolutionary scale. Symbolically, it brings up images, not only of the personal mother, but also of the collective mother, that huge mother half asleep in the unconscious, who can either suck us to our doom or fill us with creative energy. The transformative potential lies in her massive energy. This dreamer's personal mother was depressed and needed her son to mirror her. She became overprotective and constantly forbade him to go swimming with the boys, climb trees, or do anything that might hurt him. His burgeoning masculinity and his yearning for action were thus swallowed up. He lost his dog, but he did manage to save his cat, or the feminine instinct. He explored the realms of art and eventually achieved success in film, art, and music. In his marriage, however, He was insecure and jealous, fearing that other men, because he perceived them as more potent, would steal what he had. His energy, erratic at best, tended to flow toward depression and inertia in anything he did. The energy of his personal mother and the energy of the collective unconscious, which prefers sleeping in the mud to transforming in the fire, was in the great mother crocodile. Her energies were not available to him, and he was therefore unable to transform them into higher levels of integration. The word mother sometimes elicits a negative response, a fact that displeases many women. It must be remembered, however, that like fairy tales and fantasies, dreams use metaphorical language. The image mother is a tuning fork that sets off vibrations far beyond the realm of the personal mother. It resonates in the creative matrix at the core of the psyche. The matrix that contains both the devouring mother and the cherishing mother. It is the ego's fear of being sucked into an earlier unconscious state that makes it regard the great mother as negative. When the ego is strong enough to relate to the mother without losing its own identity, then mother becomes the source of all creativity. Paradoxically, so long as the ego fears the unconscious, it is at the same time magnetized by it. Driven by fear, it moves into mother in destructive ways: drugs, food, sex, alcohol, spending money, whatever. These destructive ways indicate the hostility that, quickened by fear, inevitably lashes out against the mother and or against oneself. Falling into the maternal unconscious is a repeated theme in the consulting room. A woman has a dream in which a young man is riding toward her on a bicycle. He falls into the ditch and ends up in the mud or primeval matter. His mother appears behind him and says, "Now come on home, everything will be all right." This seemingly simple dream reenacts the classical myths and summarizes whole periods of history, both personal and cultural. In this dream, the woman's new masculinity is seeking to break out of the unconscious depths, but instead he is thrown into the primal mud. Matter, mother, and mother are pulling his ego into the mud of oblivion. Be safe here. I will look after you. Why do you want to leave home? Stay here and be a good boy. This is Oedipus, who rebels against the solar father principle of a higher and more demanding mode of awareness, and seeks instead a union with the old comfort of the chthonic earth, an emotional sexual incest with the mother, and immersion in her domain. When a young boy begins to separate out from his mother, he may suddenly start imitating his father, walking like him, sitting like him, dressing like him. As soon as he is tired or hurt, however, he runs to mother for comfort. This pre-Oedipal stage soon gives way to confrontations with father, and an increased turning to mother for support. Thus, the process of separating out from the mother can often be waylaid. A man may remain locked into mother all his life, with varying amounts of resentment occasioned by a deep psychic fear of being cut adrift, or being alone physically and psychologically. But his own inner feminine has not separated out from his mother. He is unable to express his real needs or stand up for his own values. He probably does not know what they are at a mature level. Ironically, he may be married to a woman who finds her strength in mothering her boy. Girls can identify with mother for a much longer period of time, since there is no biological or social imperative for them to separate from her. Yet, Even with the most loving and caring of mothers, a girl needs to separate out and become her own person. Failure to sever the unconscious bond eventually constellates a negative relationship. The need to separate is captured in a young girl's poem, which was written for a high school yearbook. Who am I? I see the answer, half at least, in your eyes, when you smile at me, just me, focusing and defining me in time and space. I feel the fine ground lenses of love pulling me together. Oh, how beautiful you make me seem. You love me and give me life and courage and a way to be. You surround me with yourself, and I never notice, and I don't exist apart from you. You are always here standing between me and the emptiness between me and myself. It is this fear of emptiness that blocks most people from coming to an at one moment. To reach the place where we belong to ourselves, we have to sever the umbilical cord that binds us to archaic dependencies. If we have never known a loving mother, that severing can be even more difficult because we continue to long for what we never had. We continue to seek mother in our relationships, often in analysis. The analysis must hold the role of mother, the role of loving mother, until the great and loving goddess has become a reality in the analysis psyche. One of this reality comes a love affair with life and sheer delight and creativity. When the differentiation between mother and the young feminine is about to begin, the young masculine usually asserts himself. The following dream focuses on the ego's decision to encourage the young boy to act. I am on a ship. We are whale watching. The whales are gracefully riding the waves. On the other side of the boat, there are two whales, one practically on the back of the other. A little girl falls overboard and is swallowed whole by the whale. I encourage a young boy to open the whale's mouth and take out the little girl. It's incredible how this happens. The whale seems to be in a playful mood, and it is no trouble for the boy to release the tiny girl. Then there is a party to celebrate the girl's safe return. Everyone is in colorful costumes and there is dancing and lively music. This is not the patriarchal masculine, which makes the rules to keep people in their place. This is a new masculine consciousness that can pull the feminine out of the inertia of the mother, bringing a new assertiveness, a new perspective on life. Most men and women are appalled when they look at the condition of their femininity in their dreams. They are more deeply appalled when they talk to those female figures. Those female figures have stories to tell, and they will tell them if they are listened to. Thank you. Our culture has made us deaf and blind to feminine anguish. The media is making us increasingly aware of marital batterings, assaults, harassments, rape. As a culture, however, we are still blind to the false assumptions underlying many relationships, still deaf to the snide remarks some women make to undercut other women, still unable to pull the feminine out of the mud. Why has that energy become so mirrored? Working with dreams is like working with an excavation. We have to dig through layer upon layer of facades that cover the feminine before we can reach it. The individual psyche is a microcosm of the cultural macrocosm. Centuries of abuse have brought us to a crisis in which we look to the death goddess straight in the eye. That look can change our lives. It may not, in which case, we may obliterate ourselves. Even a very brief look at a few of the critical turning points in Western culture over the last 8 centuries will give us some insight into the goddess that lies buried in our depths. Anyone who has labored to release the goddess from the darkness of centuries of abuse has returned from the excavation with a paradox. She who is dead is alive. All we have to do is open our eyes an extra 16th of an inch, and there she is, dancing in a very apple blossom, in the song of every purple finch, as well as in the flames of passion that we call life. And what I want to do is I want to pause here. The chapter isn't finished, but there's another subsection. And I want to pause here because each subsection of the chapter has, a deep concept for us to think about, and discuss, you know? And I want to be able to not just gloss over or just, ride over anything, especially with those of you who do not have the book in front of you and you're simply listening. I want to make sure that you're not like missing anything. You know what I'm saying? I want to make sure you're not missing anything. So I want to ask you so far, what did you get from what I read? And I read two subsections so far, so I kind of glossed over a little bit. What did you get so far from what I read? Okay, so we just started this book. This is chapter 1. Um, we just started this last Thursday, and no, what's today? No, I think that we finished on Sunday. Actually, we finished the last chapter of the Great Cosmic Mother on Sunday, and we started the introduction on Sunday. No, that was Monday. I'm sorry. It was Monday because I needed the weekend. So it was Monday. Okay. And we finished the last chapter of The Great Cosmic Mother on Monday. And then we read the introduction. I actually gave you guys a chance to vote on the next book, and everybody who was here was able to vote on the next book, and this is the one that they chose. This one got the most votes out of the other options. So this is the book that we're reading. So we was able to read the introduction on the same day on Monday. Okay. Right. So yes. So this is chapter 1 right now. You didn't really miss too much. You didn't miss too much. This is chapter 1. And so far from what you have heard, what did you get from what you heard so far? So let me see. This chapter started off with an invocation to Kali, which I appreciate. And that invocation speaks about bringing the darkness into the light. I think that's very integral. I think a lot of times we focus on light all the time and we don't focus on the darkness, right? But the darkness is what gives us a field of potential, the ability or the room, the permission to create, right? To formulate, to manipulate energy, right? And create our desired reality. And they also spoke about the symbology of the goddess Kali, right? They spoke about her fierce image, the bloodied sword, the severed head, the garland of skulls, her nudity. They spoke about all these things. Her tongue sticking out of her mouth. They spoke about all these things. They didn't go too deep into it, but they mentioned it. And they also showed that she has a halo around her head, right? And they spoke about how she She is something that is beyond duality, right? Not just the duality of life and death, but beyond that, because she represents a oneness, right? She is what you would call the Great Mother. And that's something that they also went into, is the difference or the distinction between Great Mother and Goddess, right? So the Great Mother, as we understand her in Yonism, is the eternal blackness. She is the source of all things. She is the great Yoni. She is the cosmic womb. She is that void, that abyss, right? Where all of the universe is birthed. That is what the Great Mother is. Um, she is the eternal, right? And then you have the goddess, and the goddess is the personification of the Great Mother, or her daughter, if you will, right? And there's different experiences that you have with them. There's different experiences that you have with them, and then they went into the different experience of how humanity and the psyches, how they relate to each manifestation of the goddess, like the unmanifested form and the manifested form, right? So the unmanifested form creates a sense of fear because we do not understand the blackness. We do not understand what happens after death, right? We do not understand why death is a part of life in the first place. So because us as humans are coming into a space of perceiving ourselves as something separate from nature, that is when the fear kind of set in as to like, well, why do we have to die? You know what I'm saying? Like dying is scary. Like, why do we have to do that? So let's start giving you what you need. Let's give you some blood sacrifices so that we can not die, right? That's how that worked. Lights out. God is a female. Is that what you mean? Oh yeah, we passed that. We passed that. Lights out. Have you been here for the past couple books? We read The Great Cosmic Mother. We just finished that. And before that, we read When God Was a Woman. So God is female is a central theme over here. So this is our third book that we're reading, Dancing in the Flames, Dark Goddess, the Dark Goddess and the Transformation of Consciousness. Yes, 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 yes. So yeah, God as a female is we all know that part. Now we're getting into the intricacies of, after you know that, then what? Like, you know what I'm saying? And I think this is the perfect book. I'm glad you guys chose it. This is a perfect book to go into after the first two books, because the first two books is kind of like, it's like an introduction to God being a feminine being, to people who've never heard of it before, to people who are skeptical, to people who are just now coming into the consciousness of like leaving Abrahamic like ways of thinking. You know what I'm saying? So those were great introductory books. And I think in this book, we get into, okay, after you know that the goddess is the creator of everything, what is that like? Like how, like what kind of transformation happens? And I think we got into it as soon as we started in chapter 1, which is now about I'm learning raising Islam. Perfect. Perfect. Yes, perfect. Um so yeah, you kind of missed the first two books, which was like an introductory of getting you to understand like you know before Islam, before Judaism, before Christianity, the world worshiped the mother, right? And those books went into how the cultures perceived the divine, how they worshiped the divine, and what happened that got them to abandon the mother concept, which was obviously colonization, right? So that's what those two books delved into. Those two books delved into the destruction of goddess culture, the destruction of her understanding and how we switched to patriarchy, you know? And this book, what this book is doing so far, if you guys, are able to kind of keep up, what it's doing is it's showing you different people who are encountering the mother internally. What does that feel like? Like, once you do have that understanding, what happens? You know what I'm saying? Like, what happens? And I think it went deeper into why the mother was abandoned, right? Because it wasn't simply just, the burning of witches and all over England. It wasn't simply just the taking of people and like murdering them, right? It was also a change in psychology of humans coming into or developing a sense of ego and then becoming fearful of something that they once understood. So they developed an ego consciousness, as they said, which is the hero myth, right? And we see that in the story of Sumerian culture, where they speak about Tiamat, right? And how she was taken over by her son, So it depends. I don't know if you guys know about that story, but if you have ever read the Enuma Elish or the Eridu Genesis, whatever you want to call it, those depict the Sumerian, Akkadian, mythology, and that is the very first. Hero myth that we get, right? Where there is a man slaying a dragon, which we end up seeing in Disney stories, right? With the princess in the tower, and here comes the knight in shining armor who decides he's going to slay the dragon, save the princess, and then he goes back and he gets her as a wife, and he gets all this honor and valor and da 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 da. That in itself is the hero. The hero is basically the consciousness, It's all over ancient temples in India, Kali statues. Yes. Yes, Kali statues are all over the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that is the emergence of the ego over the collective understanding that we once had. Right? Because humanity understood, life as cyclical. They understood death as a part of life. And they experienced the mother through her ability to take care of humans. And I think we need to get back to that ability to just be grateful. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of us who focus on our lives, and we tend to look at what's not happening the way we want, what we don't like. We wish we had more money or whatever. But I think that we forget that we're very blessed, right? Imagine if we lived on a planet that did not have vegetation, and the earth was not arable at all. Imagine if we just couldn't. Like, I think people got to understand something. Like, we live in a particular kind of hell that is of our own making. Like, humans make the life that we live in now. The pursuit of glory, the pursuit of money, all of that is because we have made that. We have allowed, men to create a world where we have to struggle, when in general we don't have to do that. We don't actually have to do that, not even a little bit. So we made our life hard for no reason. Like, I don't know if you guys ever seen like a small child play in a shallow end of a pool, and then they think they're drowning, but it's like all they got to do is stand up. Like, you know what I'm saying? All they got to do is stand up, for real. But they keep putting their head under the water, laying there, just doing it on purpose. Like, you know what I mean? And that's what we are doing as human beings. It's like, you know? Yes. It's weird. It's weird. And I think that we need to really just make a choice. Make a choice to come out of that and just be like, You know what? I'm just gonna stand up. I'm just gonna stand up now. So let me see, what else did they speak about? Because I think so far this is not even the whole chapter, but it went into so much already. Let me see what else. Um, right. So they're talking about the first type of human consciousness, which is very instinctual. It's very instinctual. It's very experienced. It's very felt by the body, and from that body type of mentality, from your instincts, from your experience, you are more. You experience the mother in a kind of nurturing kind of way. You know. It says in this period, the mother was the one who fed, who provided the necessities of life through plants, seeds, and animals. Caves afforded the protection of her womb, right? Which eventually became the tomb of the cycle of life and death. She was both the nourisher of life and the destroyer. Life and death, joy and pain were a seamless reality. So, yes, a lot of ancient cultures, if you remember, we read in previous books, they spoke about how the caves acted as wombs, but also those were also burial spaces, right? Those were burial spaces. And a lot of, you could tell that it was a sacred place because they would use red ochre to simulate the blood, right? Um, and bury people in fetal position. They would bury people in fetal position. So yeah, that's one way of experiencing the mother. And then the other way of experiencing her is, well, I matter more than the cycle of life and death. I matter more than the collective oneness. So because I matter more, I don't think I want to die no more. I don't want to do that. That seems scary. I don't want to do that. So then the fear creeps in, and then it's kind of like, well, let's try our best to get out of this natural rhythm of life. you know um yeah, let me see, what else did they say. Da, 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 da. Okay. Yeah, they said, as humans slowly separated out from nature. Yeah, they said, as humans slowly separated out from nature, the primitive emotions of life and joy became differentiated from those of death and pain, right? In this phase, the self sense was more structured, more articulate, and so likewise the Great Mother. Men and women were more conscious of their own tenuous existence, and thus more conscious of the Great Mother, what she was and what she demanded. So life became more polarized, right? So they went from a sense of oneness or beyond duality and acceptance of all things to separating and looking at the two poles, right? And then because of that, they was able to choose which side of life they wanted to experience more than anything, which was life over death, right? So that was a part. So yes, you. Okay, so the difference between the great mother and the goddess, right? I want to get into that a little bit more. Um, they mentioned how you experience the mother differently from her unmanifested form. As her unmanifested form, she is abstract, she is oneness, she is all things, right? Once she becomes manifested, right, now comes a new, different type of transformation, right? We transform from life to death, right? From embodied to unembodied, right? From physical matter to spirit. And that's how we transform under the Great Mother, right? But from the goddess, she goes from literal to symbolic. So now death is still required, but it is a symbolic death. So now it is the death of the ego. So that's where Kali comes in, right? Kali, with all of her epithets, all of her characteristics, she represents um, the dissolution of the ego, right? Of all of your fears. So your fears, all of the things that you think you are, that you aren't actually, you get rid of all of that. So that is the death that you go through. And if you were to surrender to the process of going through your ego death, then you become fearless of the physical death that you're going to experience, right? So it's kind of like the daughter came in to answer the the question or the fear of the people from her mother. Does that make sense? Yeah, it says what made men change it to a male god? Yeah, Mika, I know you get it, girl. I know you get it, girl. Um, what made men change it to a male god? Wait, were you here? Let me see if I can find it for you. I already started to mention it. It started with the separation, right? And then it started with ego consciousness. Ego consciousness, right? And with that ego consciousness came the desire to control nature, right? The desire to control nature, not be one with it, not work with it, to control it, right? And the desire to control nature came from the fear of death, right? The fear of death and nature are one and the same, right? Because nature is cyclical, right? Lights, are you listening to anything that's being said, or are you not listening? Because I don't know what you're talking about. The way that nature works, it works in a cyclical fashion, right? It works in a cyclical fashion. And when you look at the seasons represent, the spring represents blooming of life, right? The summer represents the peak of life, right? Evolution, energy, right? And then you have fall, which is the waning of life. Now life is going down, and then winter is the death of life. So if you look at that, people are disassociating from that process, right? So now psychologically they're like, well, how can we uh prolong life? How can we prolong life? How can we get out of this life and death cycle? How can we get out of that? Because they're looking at it and they're seeing it as repetitive, something that does not represent progression, right? You can't progress if you're going to die. So how about we maintain life? How about we live eternally? And how about we live and progress in a linear fashion? So basically, what happened was they decided to get rid of everything that represented cyclical life, everything that represented or led them down the road of you're going to die. They want to get rid of that. So that's what it is. So let me know if you're understanding. If you're not, if you're just not listening, let me know that too. But if you are just struggling to understand, like you're struggling with your competency, then let me know that too, because maybe I'm just not explaining it well. Or if you're just not listening, you can say that as well, because I don't want to be like repeating myself either. So you know what I mean. So that's what's happening. That is what's happening. Yeah, and I answered you. Did you understand what I said? That's what I'm asking. Did you understand the answer that I just gave you? Total black mom moment. I guess. Yeah, like, sometimes, sometimes people need a little help, a little bit more help. You know what I mean? Like, okay, it says here, let me reiterate. There's a sentence here that I probably should highlight this. It says, worshipping the Great Mother meant identifying with her and trying to appease her great power over one's life by offering her a sacrifice outside of oneself. As in, okay, Great Mother, I want to live. Let me sacrifice a goat for you. Do you like that? Do I get to live? That's pretty much what that was. Then it says, the worship of the goddess, right? Remember, I said the goddess and the Great Mother, two separate things. The worship of the goddess, on the other hand, involved entering into a process of self transformation. In order to reach the desired level of archetypal oneness, one had to transcend the ego boundaries. Okay? At this early stage in ego development, transcendence could be very threatening. It was safer merely to maintain participation mystique with the mother, right? So what they're saying is that when it comes to actual self transformation and getting rid of your ego, it is threatening to that person, to their pride, to their understanding of their sense of self. So they'd much rather shallowly participate in the old sacrifices, like the ones that are literal, because they don't want to sacrifice who they think they are. Does that make sense? Okay, great. I'm glad you're getting it now. I'm glad you're getting it now. I just had to, yeah. So basically, right now, when you look at life right now, the reason why we are even going through all of these books, is because the Great Mother is awakening humanity, right? And you can tell that by the change in the planet, the frequency of the planet, how it's changing, how it is, um, you know, having extra volcanoes erupting, extra earthquakes, some tornadoes happening recently, hurricanes happening. All this stuff is happening because the frequency of the earth is shifting, right? And it's shifting to awaken goddess consciousness again, right? So that people are now starting to remember, or being called to remember, an ancient knowing, which is the mother, right? Since we all been asleep, we all forgot. And so the Great Mother is doing her thing with awakening people consciously, but now people have to be faced with the goddess, or her daughter, or the manifested form of her, who is telling people the way back, the way to oneness, the way to harmony, the way to happiness, right? Is to destroy your ego. You must destroy your ego. The eclipse is happening tonight. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mika. Yes, it is. The eclipses, the blood moons, all of the things that's happening, that's all changing the frequency of the planet. Yes. Even the solar and lunar eclipse helps people awaken. I felt awakened because of an eclipse years ago. Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So we are being faced with getting rid of our egos. Our egos is the ones that gives us our limitations in the way that we live our lives. Our egos is the one that tells us that we're not good enough, that tells us that we can't do something, that tells us that life is supposed to be this way, that women are not capable or less capable, right? The ego tells our men that they have to do more than they actually can. The ego tells everybody something different that's not true, right? And we have to be willing to take what we think we know about ourselves and just put it off to the side. Put it off to the side. Go into a space where you're not distracted by anything. Thank you, soulfully. Where you're not distracted by anything, and just sit in the darkness and silence and see what comes to you then. See what comes to you then, because that's when you're going to be able to hear any messages of what the goddess is telling you, what she needs to tell you, what you need to change in your life currently. Because most times the limitations that we have, they're self-imposed. They're self-imposed, right? A lot of our fears, false evidence appearing real, it is imposed, right? Remember, this entire reality is illusory. This entire reality, the Hindus call it Maya. Maya is the projection or the perception of the Great Mother, right? So all of this is a simulated reality that comes from the great consciousness, right? And we're all playing this game. Now we have decided to crank up the difficulty meter on our game, right? But we can win the game, right? Win, which would be getting to a space of oneness, of peacefulness, of flow, right? Walking the path of least resistance, right? Which we learn in the Tao Te Ching, right? So there is ways to do this. There's ways to do this, but the only way to do so, though, is to empty our cups, is to get rid of all the things that hold us back, is to get rid of all the things that make us think that we can't do something or make us think that we are undeserving, right? So we have to get rid of those things. Most people can't get rid of those things because they have found solace in the character that they have created for themselves. And I call this the victim mentality, right? Depending on what it is that you're holding on to, if you identify with your struggle, if you identify with, the world is just against you, if you identify with, oh, I am just a victim of my circumstance, then you are the one who keeps locking your own cell door. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have the key in your hand and you're keeping it closed because you identify with being locked up. You know what I'm saying? So this is all a psychological labyrinth that we have to get through. It's a maze that we have to be able to find the exit. You know what I'm saying? But in this particular maze, if you let go of your ego, doors will start to open. If you keep your own mental blocks, you'll never find your way out. Does that make sense? So the power is within you. And I think that's the biggest thing that, the goddess teaches us, is that the power is within you, not outside of yourself, but within you. Okay? Sorry, I know it's so loud. Yes, thank you. I need to hear all that. I've been feeling overwhelmed. Sorry. I get distracted by some of the music. But yeah, it's hold on one second. Coming. I'm on live doing my book club. Do you need me?
No, not really.
Okay. I've ordered both books. Thanks. Oh, which one? Did you order this one in The Great Cosmic Mother or When God Was a Woman in Great Cosmic Mother? I forgot. So, okay. I just be doing stuff. I'm not even good with accents for real, but I just be doing stuff. Okay, so that was one part of the book. And then I think the next section we spoke about the eclipse of the great goddess, which is, the male hero coming into play, obviously. And they also went into some dream interpretation, which I think, like I said, is the perfect way to follow up from the introductory books that we read, where it speaks about how the mother shows up in your dreams, right? How we interpret the divine feminine and divine masculine. And I'm glad that they went into the different type of whatchamacallit, masculine energy that presents itself in a matriarchal form. Because I think when I have conversation about matriarchy all the time, people always wonder, like, well, what role does the man play? Like, do they lose value? Do we not like them? Are they, forgotten about or tossed away? And that is so far from the truth. And I try to tell people this all the time. But when we return to, goddess consciousness, the man actually gains value. But you would have to be able to see that in the patriarchy, you actually don't have value as a man. You have privilege, but you ain't got no value, right? And I think because you get privilege, you think you're valued, but no, you're not valued. You are stepped on just like us women, but just in a different way, right? And so when it comes to being under the mother or surrendering to the mother, the masculine actually, the men, they actually gain their masculinity back, you know? They gain their masculinity back. They gain their sense of purpose back. You understand what I'm saying? To the point where they are dutiful. They are they're bound by their honor. You understand what I'm saying? So men these days don't have honor or duty, right? But you get that back once you are surrendering to the mother. Okay. So the dream where they were speaking about, even beyond discipline, it's not even about discipline anymore. Like, discipline is something that you learn in the patriarchy, which discipline is predicated upon your desire for progress, right? And since the patriarchy, like, values progress over anything else, like, it values progress over the well-being of the individual. It values progress over the well-being of the collective. It values progress over the well-being of the earth, which is our home, right? And because it values progress so much, it is the type to impose its will upon, right? To impose its will upon, to break something down in order to get what you want. And discipline and willpower is you imposing your will upon your own body, right? You're not listening to your body. You're not paying attention to what your body needs. You know what I'm saying? And you're pushing past the needs of your body because you want to achieve something. You want to make sure you're making progress all the time. So that obsessive need to push, to be disciplined, right? Like all those creators who you see make content about, oh, I'll wake up at 4:30, I do this before I even get up for work. All of that perpetuates discipline culture, which is the patriarchy, who doesn't tell you to listen to your body, right? So when it comes to living in a goddess culture or being in tune with earth or nature, right? There is a flow that you must tap into. There's a frequency that you must tap into, and you must ride the wave. Does that make sense? You ride the wave so that you're not um living in a sense of like resistance or hardship. Like nobody wants to hike up a mountain with a boulder on their shoulders. But the patriarchy rewards those who hike up a mountain with a boulder on their shoulders, right? Because if you can get to the top with the boulder, then you've made it, you've done it, you're great. But in the matriarchy, it's not like, why would you do that? That's harming your body. You know what I mean? That's harming your body. How can you be able to appreciate the beauty, the majesty of earth or the view of the mountain if you're focused so much on your freaking muscles, right? So, so we have to understand that we must get out of discipline and get more into devotion, right? So, devotion to yourself, devotion to the collective of humanity, devotion to the earth. Because when you are devoted to, then you will do your duty to get up and do what you need to do to make sure that everyone is taken care of, right? That everyone is taken care of, and that everybody gets what they need to thrive, to sustain, to live life, to be healthy, right? It's a totally different thing. But when you're devoted, that is your push to do what is necessary to help with, people living beautifully, you know? So if you're going to hike a mountain, you would do so in a slow paced and rhythmic manner where you would take breaks and you'll sit and you'll enjoy the scenery. You'll take breaks and you'll pay attention to what herbs is in the area. You'll probably find something that you haven't seen before, and you'll be able to study the herbs and be able to be like, oh, I love this, and take it back for any of the elderly back in your village who may need some healing. Like, oh, this is a rare herb. Let me take this back with me. You see what I'm saying? So, as an eye, so it's like there's a difference. The actions can still be done. Both people can still hike the mountain, but it would be done in different manners. It will be done in a different manner. One is a pursuit to glory, a pursuit to um, receive praise for their individual pursuits and progress, and the other one is for the sake of experience, for the sake of listening to your body and understanding well-being, right? Well-being is a marriage between your mind, your body, and your spirit. That's what your well-being is. So, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? um Let me see. So we yes, it's a totally different life. It's a totally different life. um and I think, not even I think, I know that if we were to let go of our egos, right, or all the things that we have been conditioned to believe, if we let go of that and we enter into Goddess consciousness and we return to, the way in which we used to be, the way in which we used to appreciate the oneness of all things, we will be able to achieve a life that is happy, peaceful. You know what I mean? No unnecessary drama, no unnecessary grinding hard to make money. That whole concept of money would disappear, to be honest with you. Um, we won't be as lonely as people. We will not, the earth will become more healthy because we would stop doing what we're doing to it to consume, right? So, again, it'll be like a ripple. So, from the letting go of the ego is a ripple, a change of everything. You know what I'm saying? So, it's very, very important that we consider doing that work. The next subsection of this chapter is called The Black Goddess. And I think I do appreciate this book too, because it goes into the blackness of the goddess, not just the goddess itself, but the blackness of her, because that element is really really important. And I'm not saying that just because I'm black, because when I'm speaking about blackness, I'm speaking about the metaphysical term, in the metaphysical sense, right? So that part is very very important. So, and I'm glad that the first goddess they started with was Kali. They started with her, and Kali is universally black, as in the cosmos black. You know what I'm saying? So they started with her, and so yes, we're gonna read the Black Goddess tomorrow. Okay, and we're going to continue because this chapter is pretty long. The Black Goddess is on page 28. Because of all the subsections, the chapters are pretty long, so it's okay. And this book only has 7 chapters with subsections, so we'll definitely um take a break to kind of discuss the different elements and concepts that's being spoken about in between, because it goes into a lot. It goes into a lot. But yeah, this is one of my favorite books, and I recommend this book to a lot of people. After you've gotten over the introductory books, this is a great one for you to actually, once you're in goddess consciousness, this is like the first thing to kind of understand your dreams, to kind of understand the symbolic nature of what you're being told, what you have to learn now that you're here. Now what? You know what I'm saying? I think this is a great book to go into right after that. So yes. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or thoughts, then go ahead and let me know now. Also, I wanted to say this before I forget. The movie nights, now movie nights is always Tuesday at 6. And I think that what I want to do is I want to delete the app that I downloaded because it's giving people issues. And also, I'm tired of paying for these things. Anywho, but I really want to incorporate movie night with our in-person book club. So if you're in New York and um you're interested in coming to our book club, I will incorporate movie night with you guys. But for you guys on the internet, I'm having too much issues with the internet and all the apps, and you got to be subscribed, and yeah, it's just too many paywalls. You know what I mean? And issues and technical difficulties, and I really don't have time for it. So we will be concluding Tuesday movie nights, and I'm going to be deleting the Teleparty app. You can do so as well, but those movie nights will continue with our in-person book club. So if you are in New York, consider coming to our book club meeting, which is being held every Thursday during the same time, 4 to 6. So if you would like to go ahead and go to our website, which is yonismtemple.com, and you should be able to sign up and reserve your spot. It's $5 to come. So yes, go ahead and get your tickets and be able to um, come and be a part of it all. Be a part of it all. Yes. But yeah, like you guys missed some movies, man. Y'all missed some movies. We watched Lithia, the first one, and then we watched what's it called? No Men Beyond This Point. And then after that we watched what you call it? The Amazon Women in the Avocado Jungle. And then after that we watched Sumaru. There's still more. There's still a lot more. And I really want to share that with you guys. But there's a lot more matriarchal movies. And we didn't even get to the TV shows. And, we didn't get to the TV shows yet. But TV shows, it's a lot to watch, So, you know, there's a lot. And I'm excited. So, yes, we'll be continuing book club tomorrow, page 28. Subtitle The Black Goddess. Okay. But yeah, if that's all for today, I do appreciate you guys for coming, and I'll see you all tomorrow.